The two-year investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election has come to an end. Attorney General William Barr released a summary of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report. We have the full details later tonight.
And the Israeli Prime Minister at the White House today, after a massive change in U.S. foreign policy, sparks tension in the Middle East. President Trump says Israel has sovereignty over the contested Golan Heights. We'll deliver our full analysis on the decision.
And the EU is pushing back the deadline for Brexit. The UK was supposed to leave the EU this upcoming Friday, but May's deal was rejected by Parliament. Talking Point reporter Connor White gives us an update on the chaotic process in the UK tonight on Talking Points. On Friday, Special Counsel Robert Mueller reportedly handed in his finished report on Russian interference into the 2016 election. Good evening and welcome to Talking Points. I'm Elijah Shama.
And I'm Jack Watson. On Sunday, Attorney General William Barr sent a 4-page letter to Congress detailing the major findings of the report. Barr wrote that Mueller found, quote, 2 main efforts by the Russians to interfere in the 2016 election: a social media disinformation campaign and hacking operations targeting Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party. Barr says that Mueller found no efforts by the Trump campaign or anyone associated with it to conspire or coordinate with Russia. However, the special counsel reportedly made no conclusion on possible obstruction of justice made by the president.
Barr's memo stated that while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him. At this point, it is unclear how much more information Barr intends to release regarding the memo. Over the weekend, President Trump was quick to declare his innocence in the wake of the report findings.
There was no collusion with Russia. There was no obstruction, and none whatsoever. And it was a complete and total exoneration.
And now to break this all down, we bring in our Talking Points analyst, Michael Furnari. Michael, thanks so much for being here. Now, we know the big conceptual parts of the Barr letter. Give us some of the more additional details.
Yes, Jack, I can do that. Now, we heard from President Trump about how this is a complete and total exoneration, and whether or not that's true actually kind of depends on how you think he means that. So, of course, this is an exoneration on the collusion charges. Mueller and Barr have reported that there is no evidence that there was any collusion involving the Russian government. Now, on the question of obstructions, where this gets a little muddier, now, Barr says in the report that the Mueller probe did not find sufficient evidence to make any substantive claims regarding obstruction of justice, and the report, in a more broader sense, basically abstained from making any kind of judgment on obstruction. And that's the kind of the finer detail of what we heard from Trump there.
So, Barr has indicated that he's going to release more findings. How much more and what should we expect from Barr moving forward?
How much more we're going to get from Barr is not exactly obvious. Now, kind of heading into this process, Lindsey Graham said to the public that he had spoken with Barr privately and that Barr would be willing to testify in front of the Judiciary Committee. But that's not on the schedule right now. There's no real indication that's going to actually happen. And of course, Mitch McConnell today, about half an hour ago, ended up blocking a move by Chuck Schumer to try and make it so that Barr would have to make the full report public. At this point, there's really no obvious indication that he's going to go either way.
And Michael, lots of reactions on both sides. What have they been?
Now, on the Democrat side, the reaction has mostly been to kind of call for the full release of the report and kind of deflect a little bit. A good example of this would be House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. She tweeted earlier in about a day or two ago about this, saying that the letter raises as many questions as it answers. It does not exonerate the president. And of course, what she goes on to say later on in this tweet, that the full report needs to be made public without any further delay. And that's really been echoed by a lot of Democrats. Pretty much every presidential candidate has been stumping around the country, and they've all included that in their recent campaign speeches. And then on the Republican side, of course, there's really been a lot of rejoicing on this one, because this was really supposed to be the silver bullet to defeat President Trump, and now they feel a little more at ease because they are not going to have to be put in a tough position where they have to defend potentially a president who is accused of crime.
So moving forward, this isn't the only investigation into President Trump. There is also the investigation by the Southern District of New York. Can you talk a little bit about where that investigation is heading now?
Yeah, so right now with the Southern District of New York, Michael Cohen is cooperating with the operation, and that is a division of prosecution in New York that is most famous actually for mob cases. And so the fear, if you're President Trump, is that Michael Cohen, with providing so much information, is going to be able to link you to financial crimes, probably at some point in the last decade. Not expected that it really has any link to Russia whatsoever, but there's no timetable for that wrapping up.
And Michael, lastly, the political ramifications of this. There could be electoral ramifications to this. What might they be?
Absolutely. Now, for the last 2 years or so, I think a lot of Democrats have really been hoping that this was going to be the thing that could bring President Trump down, and that instead of having to really deal with the issues in 2020, they would be able to point to this and be able to point to some kind of impeachment proceeding or point to some kind of impropriety. But now it seems like the 2020 campaign will be a little more focused on the issues with this off the table.
And Michael, with the House Democrats' actions and words this past week, it's my sense that the House Democrats are not satisfied with this, and they will certainly keep pursuing action moving forward. Michael Furnari, thanks so much.
All right. And multiple states around the country are attempting to strengthen their abortion laws. And a new state has just passed a bill that bans abortions from the moment a heartbeat can be detected by a doctor. Last week, Mississippi Governor Phil Bryant joined multiple other states signing one of the strictest abortion laws in the nation. The bill has received harsh criticism from pro-choice activists across the country. Here to break down the bill and its opposition is Talking Points analyst Anthony Dabbundo.
Part of Governor Bryant's goal since he's been in office has been to ban abortion in Mississippi and hopefully the country, and this is just another effort in that goal.
It's called the Heartbeat Bill, and it's one of the strictest abortion laws in the nation. As soon as a doctor consents a heartbeat, which is sometimes even sooner than the woman knows herself, the abortion is banned. Now, Mississippi already had multiple restrictions in place prior to this, including a 15-week ban on abortion. And also, there's only one currently open and operating abortion clinic in the entire state of nearly 3 million people. The bill passed on a nearly party line vote, with only one Republican choosing to vote against the bill. The law bans abortions as early as 6 weeks into pregnancy. But the Center for Reproductive Rights called the law, quote, cruel and clearly unconstitutional, end quote. There is one exception for abortions. If the mother's life or body could potentially be in danger, the pregnancy could be terminated prematurely. But an illegal termination would leave the doctor who performed it without a medical license. Now, Mississippi isn't the first state to pass this law, and it certainly won't be the last. 11 states have now introduced bills, including Texas, Florida, and Georgia. And while Kentucky Governor Matt Bevins signed the Kentucky Heartbeat Bill into law last week, it was almost immediately struck down in a court and will now go through legal battles. And Roe v. Wade will likely be at the center of American discourse on this issue going forward.
Now, Anthony, we've seen some of the other heartbeat laws get struck down in courts. What happens next for this law?
Yes, Elijah, it's definitely something that will probably end up in the Supreme Court. So many different lower courts have made different decisions depending on whether or not it's in a more conservative area or more liberal area, depending on who the judge is. There's so many different variations of this law also that make it difficult to discern what's going to happen at the higher courts. And because of these different rulings, the ACLU has stepped in, and there's been so many different lawsuits that the Supreme Court, who has typically tried to stay away from ruling on abortion law since Roe v. Wade, is going to have to make a decision here and decide the constitutionality of this heartbeat bill.
All right, our Anthony Dabbundo. Anthony, thank you so much. Coming up on Talking Points tonight, President Trump's latest nominee to the Federal Reserve. Our Elijah Shama breaks down what his nomination means for the Fed moving forward after the break. Stay with us. I-81. Its lifespan ended more than 2 years ago, and with time running out, there is no concrete plan. These are the crossroads splitting the city and the region. The community grid.
To save my city and my neighborhood and my kids' lives.
Replacing the viaduct.
Commercial businesses which want to be located alongside a highway.
And building a tunnel.
We really need to rebuild the fabric of the city.
Businesses, residents, and money. The issue gets more complex as time runs out. But CitrusTV News has you covered. Our 7-part series will break down the most important aspects of the decision. Starting Monday, April 1st, we will be tackling the biggest decision facing Central New York.
Maybe he's really focused.
Maybe he likes spinning the wheels.
Maybe he just loves trucks.
Preoccupation with objects is one early sign of autism. Learn the others today.
Did you hear about the pony with a sore throat? He was a little horse. Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding. Why couldn't the Wait, why was the basketball court all wet? Why? Because the players kept dribbling all over it. Where did Cavs go on vacation? New York.
Welcome back to Talking Points. The March 22nd nomination of Stephen Moore to a seat on the Federal Reserve Board by President Donald Trump drew quick criticism, ranging from pundits to the chairman of the White House Council for Economic Advisors under President George W. Bush. But what is the Federal Reserve Board, and why do so many on both sides of the aisle think that Moore isn't the right man for the job? To answer the first question, the Board of the Federal Reserve helps determine the monetary policy of the United States. That is to say, everything from overseeing how economic policies impact people's day-to-day lives to setting long-term interest rates to make sure the U.S. economy continues to grow. And it's Moore's views on the latter that have had people questioning his fitness for the job. During the Obama years, Moore railed that low interest rates were a laggard on the economy, sure to cause hyperinflation. When Donald Trump espoused low interest rates after his election, Moore switched his position. But that's Moore's policy in the abstract. In reality, only one government has listened to Moore's economic advice, the state of Kansas, which in 2013 implemented a host of suggested tax cuts recommended by Moore promising near immediate growth. The opposite happened, and Kansas's state budget was thrown into disarray. Along the way, Moore said so many misstatements that he was eventually barred by the Kansas City Star from his contributions in the paper. Now, this nomination is by no means a sure thing. Moore still needs Senate approval to get the job, but the nomination itself shows an attempt by Trump to put in place a loyalist in an institution that has been largely removed from politics.
Now, Elijah, as you mentioned, Moore, a very conservative individual. Now, what does this politicization of the Fed mean?
In the future, this is going to be big. When you look at U.S. economic growth, the Fed has generally been seen as something outside of politics. It's been something that kind of everyone could agree on, and that these Fed chairs and these people on the Federal Reserve boards were not meant to be tied to a certain administration. These were people that were supposed to work for years and years outside of these administrations, often under more than one administration, to ensure a continuation of similar monetary policy for years to come. And if this happens, we could see the economy becoming a lot more kind of quick fire bursts than it should be.
All right, Elijah, we'll definitely keep an eye on that Fed nominee moving forward. Thanks so much.
Of course. And earlier today, President Trump signed a proclamation formally recognizing the Golan Heights as Israeli territory, effectively overturning the prior longstanding U.S. policy regarding the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights just weeks before Israeli elections. This follows President Trump announced this via Twitter last Thursday that the move is, quote, critical strategic and security importance to the state of Israel and regional stability, end quote. The signing of the proclamation came as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the White House today. Here to break down the reactions to this and the impacts of the decision is Talking Points analyst Gabrielle Caracciolo. So, Gabrielle, is this decision surprising, or was it kind of a more predictable move by President Trump?
It was only a matter of time, guys. Last year, he moved the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and he's become increasingly more and more pro-Israel. So it was only a matter of time before he made this proclamation.
And Gabrielle, in the Middle East itself, what has the reaction been in Israel?
Well, in Israel, among the local people in the Golan Heights region, Israelis have been largely positive. Take a listen to what one regional council member had to say.
The recognition by President Trump of Israeli sovereignty in the Golan is important, just as important as the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. The two are linked together.
So that's what politicians are saying in Israel, but what are politicians saying here in the U.S.? What's been the reaction to this kind of move from U.S. politicians?
Right, so there hasn't been too many people making statements on that. There's been a lot going on the last couple of days in U.S. politics, but those who have come out saying positive things. Ted Cruz was one who said this was a tremendous decision. People who haven't really agreed haven't said so.
And Gabrielle, moving beyond just the U.S.-Israeli relation, what does this mean for the entire Middle East region going forward?
Well, Syria, almost immediately after that tweet last Thursday, came out saying this is a blatant attack against them, and as well, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and the Hamas also are saying this is not right and it should not be Israeli sovereignty in that region.
Now, these events don't happen in a vacuum. This is happening during Israeli elections. Can you talk a little bit about what a move like this means for Netanyahu's re-election bid?
Right. Well, Netanyahu was at the White House this morning when President Trump signed this proclamation, and this can only be a positive thing for him. He's also facing a lot of turmoil in his term. He's got 3 different investigations going on right now for him. But as you heard earlier, people in Israel like that they have this proclamation, so that can only help Netanyahu in the elections that are just about 3 weeks away.
All right, our analyst Gabrielle Caracciolo. We're unfortunately going to have to leave it there. Gabrielle, thank you. The leaders of 7 South American nations gathered in Chile last Friday to create a new regional political bloc. Find out how Prosur could influence South American politics after the break.
Got a quarter?
Welcome back to Talking Points. For nearly 2 years, the United Kingdom was set to leave the European Union this Friday, March 29th. However, last week, Prime Minister Theresa May struck a deal with the EU negotiators to extend the Brexit deadline. And tonight, British lawmakers took control of the Brexit process, setting up a series of votes later this week to decide what to do next. Talking Points reporter Connor White brings us the latest in the ongoing Brexit process and what comes next from London, England.
Amidst the indecision and turmoil in Westminster, protesters took to the streets of London on Saturday calling for a second referendum on the decision to leave the EU. According to organizers, over 1 million people joined the Put It to the People march. They believe a second vote is required to ensure a fair decision on Brexit.
It was a very narrow vote to vote for leave, and since then the government has made such a mess of it.
I think that the referendum was fought on the basis of mistruths, lies. The outcome is a grave threat to the security and health of this country.
According to protesters, British leaders failed to give adequate information about exactly what Brexit would entail. The protesters that line these streets here in London on Saturday have since moved along, and so too has the deadline for Brexit. Last week, the European Union granted Theresa May an extension on her deal after it failed twice in the House of Commons. But there are strings attached. If Parliament votes yes on May's deal, the UK will now have until May 22nd to finalise plans. If the deal fails again, however, the UK will have to sort out a new plan by April 12th to avoid crashing out of the European Union without a deal.
Almost everything is now in the hands of the British Parliament and Theresa May's government.
However, Parliament is not likely to vote in favour of May's plan at the third time of asking. Commons Speaker John Bercow says another vote will not happen unless, quote, substantial changes are made. According to May, this leaves 3 options: a no-deal Brexit, revoking Article 50 and remaining in the EU, or seeking yet another extension. This would mean the UK would be forced to partake in European Parliament elections later this year.
I hope we can all agree we are now at the moment of decision, and I will make every effort to ensure that we are able to leave with a deal and move our country forward.
The disdain for May's deal indicates the Prime Minister is losing the confidence of her party and faces the potential prospect of being forced out of 10 Downing Street. With May's deal all but left in the dust, Parliament will convene this week to vote on other potential avenues out of the EU. If MPs come to a new decision, the public could face the second referendum protesters demanded this past weekend. Reporting from London, England, I'm Connor White.
And that's our Connor White reporting from London. The Parliament will vote on how to deal with Brexit this Thursday, as we're just learning tonight. CitrusTV will keep you updated on what lawmakers decide.
And 7 South American nations are creating Prosur, a new regional political bloc. Prosur held its inaugural meeting in Santiago, Chile, last Friday. This isn't the first South American political alliance, though UNISUR was created in 2008. However, Prosur's predecessor fell apart when politics shifted to the right across the region. Analyst Camilia Gigera Naon is here to discuss the Prosur summit and how it impacts the entire region.
South American leaders announced a new regional bloc last week called Prosur. This legislation will replace the Union of South American Nations, which was created by former Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez to counter U.S. influence. The presidents of Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Chile, Ecuador, Paraguay, and Peru attended a summit on Friday in Santiago, Chile, where the declaration was signed. President Pineda of Chile said the 7-nation bloc will be committed to maintaining democracy across South America. The previous bloc, called UNASUR, was created in 2008 when leftist populism was prevalent across South America. It began to deteriorate when center-right governments began to take power. UNASUR's inability to take action on the current Venezuelan crisis ultimately led South American leaders to suspend their memberships. Prosur is a sign of the changing political climate in South America, but several countries may stay away. Pressing Venezuela to return to a democratic government is an ambitious task, and to some Venezuelans, Prosur seems like an improvisational solution for the devastated country.
All right, Camila, thank you. Violent street protests in France have led the French government to impose a ban on demonstrations across a main avenue in Paris. The move is apparently intended to target the Yellow Vests, a group claiming to seek economic justice. CitrusTV analyst Brandon Ross is in studio to tell us why this measure was enacted and what it can mean for the future.
Well, Jack, this move is particularly interesting because of the logic given by Prime Minister Edouard Philippe. The Yellow Vest movement has been ongoing for 4 months. Among other things, it's called for lower fuel taxes, the implementation of a solidarity tax on wealth, a minimum wage increase, and most notably, the resignation of French President Emmanuel Macron. Philippe pointed to violent demonstrations from last weekend as his reasoning behind the ban. Fires were set and 60 people were injured, including 17 police officers and a fireman. But oddly enough, he did not point fingers at the Yellow Vest movement for this. Philippe explicitly stated that he does not mix up criminals with the majority of Yellow Vest protesters. However, this may not save Philippe from what might have been a big mistake from the Macron government. Before last weekend, the protest movement was actually starting to die down after 4 months. After this ban, though, 40,000 Yellow Vest protesters marched around France on Saturday. They were a little bit more peaceful, but there were some full-on police charges through crowds to disrupt those protests.
Now, Brandon, it seems like the movement has some renewed energy over there. Do you think that that energy is going to sustain?
It seems like it's going to actually pick up some momentum. During those protests, there was actually a 73-year-old woman who people claim her head hit a pole as a result of a police charge, and now there's going to be a lawsuit as a result of that, and this could really stoke up this movement and really give it some more momentum to push forward.
Brandon, thank you. Coming up on Talking Points, it's one of Central New York's most pressing issues, and the time to make a decision is getting closer. We're looking ahead with Citrus TV's coverage of all sides of the issue. Stay with us.
They call me Maxie, but I prefer tripod. I was your above-average four-legged homie, and then wham-bam minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high-five.
I see you mobbing over her. Let's go. Let's mob. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, we mobbing. Come on, girl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl.
This is the story of a boy who didn't talk for a long time. The boy liked things to always be the same. Any changes would scare and upset him. The unknown was an unfriendly place. The boy was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. He wasn't trying to be mean, it just made him feel uncomfortable. Sometimes he would flap his arms again and again.
One day, I found out I have something called autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I found my voice and learned all the ways I could live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
Leaving hot coals improperly extinguished can cause a wildfire.
Hey guys, it's Smokey!
It looks as if Smokey is going to use the drown, stir, drown and feel technique. After the first drown, a good start. Next, another drink. And finally, a close feel.
Is it cool? Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Smokey, catch! Oh, my bad, Smokey.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Welcome back to Talking Points. Central New York is weighing what to do about I-81 in Syracuse, and there's not much time left. Soon, the region will decide between a community grid, a tunnel, or refurbishing what is already downtown.
We're looking ahead tonight on Talking Points to the decision with Citrus TV's exclusive coverage of all sides of the issue. I-81. Its lifespan ended more than 2 years ago, and with time running out, there is no concrete plan. These are the crossroads splitting the city and the region. The community grid.
To save my city and my neighborhood and my kids' lawns.
Replacing the viaduct.
Commercial businesses which want to be located alongside a highway.
And building a tunnel.
We really need to rebuild the fabric of the city.
Businesses, residents, and money. The issue gets more complex as time runs out. But Citrus TV News has you covered. Our 7-part series will break down the most important aspects of the decision. Starting Monday, April 1st, we will be tackling the biggest decision facing Central New York. Now to discuss some of Citrus TV's extended coverage of the I-81 issue, we bring in our Citrus TV News Director, Greg Bradbury. Now, Greg, give us a little bit of an overview of what Citrus TV is going to be doing.
Yeah, guys, so starting next Monday on April 1st, it's going to be a 7-part series. Now, that series is going to look at all different aspects about the controversial highway, and part of what makes it so controversial is that it's falling apart. It's time for a replacement. You know, it's been a long time coming, and now it's finally time for them to decide. So we're going to be starting by kind of looking at the history of the highway, and then we're going to go into the different rebuild options. Are they going to rebuild the current highway as it is, the viaduct, or are they going to go with something else like a community grid, which a lot of people in the community have been pushing for, to kind of rebuild the city of Syracuse and bring it back to what it was. Now from there, then we're going to be looking at the businesses in the area. How are they going to be affected by this? And you know, someone interested we talked to is to truckers and how they think that this could impact truckers going through the Syracuse area. And then lastly, we're going to look at how's it going to be paid for? Where is this money coming from?
So Greg, you've talked a little bit about kind of some of these truckers, some of these various voices. Tell me a little bit about some of the people that we're going to hear from in this special.
So you're going to be hearing from everyone from supervisors of towns to the truckers, as I just mentioned, as well as the people most affected by this, the people living in Syracuse and who are being affected by this on a daily basis. So now all of this starts on April 1st, and you can catch that series throughout the week. It'll be starting on April 1st.
And Greg, we're certainly looking forward to that coverage. Greg Bradbury, thank you so much.
Thank you. And that's all the time we have for Talking Points tonight. Remember, you can see all of our episodes, webisodes, and specials on CitrusTV.com/TalkingPoints. I'm Elijah Shama.
And I'm Jack Watson. Make sure to tune in next week for another episode of Talking Points. Have a great evening in Syracuse.